Thank you everyone for joining us today. Before we get started with the program, I would like to go over a couple housekeeping items. First, we are recording this webinar and we will email it out later this afternoon or tomorrow. And second, our speakers have set aside some time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. The lines will remain muted throughout the call, so please send your questions to me, the host, through the chat box anytime throughout the presentation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you all to this webinar today, which was originally planned as a presentation for the SAP-centric EAM conference. The journey to SAP S4HANA is a hot topic right now, and we didn't want anyone to miss out on NRG's story, so we're bringing it to you online today. With us today are two excellent speakers, Kaleem Tippett from NRG and Dennis Kurlansky from Utegration. Thank you both for being here, and I will turn it over to you to begin the program.
Thank you very much. So we're going to start with some quick introductions. My name is Kaleem Tippett. I'm a senior IT director here at NRG. I've been here and working in the deregulated energy space for over 25 years, doing a variety of jobs from consulting, marketing go lives, trading system implementations, and most recently SAP. So I'm fairly new to SAP, unlike many of you guys. So most recently, I have been PMO, co-PMO with my business leader for this S4HANA implementation that recently went live. Dennis?
Thank you, Kaleem. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Dennis Kurlansky with Utegration. I run our finance and asset performance management domain. At the end of the session today, I'll talk a little bit about Utegration and just give you an idea, if you're not familiar with us, who we are. A few points on my background. I've been working in the utility space since the early 90s, got into the SAP focused area of utilities in 1996. When I actually joined SAP, I worked for them in the utility practice for 10 years, and since then have been out doing what we're doing today, doing some consulting and other work. Back in the day when I actually was focused on a specific area of the utility, my expertise was work in asset management. So very happy to be here today. Kaleem, back to you.
Thanks, Dennis. So quick note on the agenda. So I'm going to kick it off and talk about NRG's S4HANA journey and some of the drivers for our implementation and the benefits we saw. Then I'll hand it over to Dennis and he'll drill down into S4 a little deeper. And Utegration was one of our major partners and contributors to our transformation. So thank those guys a lot. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So before we jump into the specifics of the presentation, just a little background on NRG. We are a leading U.S. integrated power company. We supported by approximately 23,000 megawatts of generation from 35 utilities. 1 megawatt provides enough power for approximately 1,000 homes. There's a lot of things that go into that number, but that's a rough estimate. We're not a traditional utility per se. We do not have wires or distribution network to your homes or businesses. But we provide the power and services. So we've gone through a major transformation over the last 3 years. We've streamlined our operations, sold several businesses and power plants. And I would say we've shifted more from that pure kind of power producer, independent power company, to an energy provider that powers homes and businesses throughout North America. So as you can see, we have 3.5 million customers now. Fortune 500 company. We're located mostly in Houston and Princeton. We have power plants, call centers, and last but not least, we have a strong commitment to sustainability, as you can see by our carbon emissions target there. So our retail customers are mostly in Texas and the Northeast. We have residential, small business, large commercial, and C&I, and you can see how that load is broken out. Historically, we generate most of our power from coal, but natural gas is the largest percentage of our fleet at this time. So we have facilities in Texas, the Northeast, Midwest, and California, including Ivanpah, which is one of the largest concentrated solar thermal energy facilities in the world. Imagine thousands of mirrors. Actually, I think there's over 500,000 mirrors that focus the sun on a large boiler to produce energy. So it's pretty impressive. Last but not least, you may know us through some of our other brands, including Reliant, Spiro, Green Mountain, and others. And you can see some of the other products and services we offer, including energy management, backup power, and the like. So with that background, let's jump into our S4HANA journey. So this began back in 2018 when we started the process to upgrade our existing 20-year-old SAP implementation. Long story short, we put out an RFP, selected an integrator, started working on our SOW for the first 5 major components you see there on the right. After some fits and starts, we weren't getting a great feeling about the integrator or how we were proceeding, so we actually switched gears, picked a different integrator, and that's when I came on there around October 2018. So we started a little bit later than we anticipated with a new integrator and me as part of the PMO, so a lot of activity there. So we named the project Impact after a fun internal crowdsourcing naming competition which we had, which I highly recommended, and those were some of the 6 themes we worked into the overall program. Around that time, we also started to talk to Utegration about their Finance for You product and how it would fit in our long-term architecture, and it was added to the project a little bit late thereafter. So today we're talking about accounting, timekeeping, payroll, Ariba, and Finance for You. Those are going to be kind of the main things I'm going to hit on before we hand it over to Dennis. So goal. So why did we start this? So I think there were sort of 7 goals that we were really focused on. Probably the biggest one is simplification. We talked about simplification of processes. How do we get more standard out-of-the-box functionality? After 20 years of being an SAP customer on the same platform with M&A, divestitures, we went through a massive transformation. You can imagine the amount of technology debt that we had that made the system very complex, driving up support costs, and was becoming harder to maintain. So we wanted a platform that would be the foundation for the next 20 years. That we could build off of, that would be that single source of truth for data and reporting. And I kind of hate that saying because, it really doesn't mean that we're getting rid of all these various sub-ledger systems where we capture our energy trades and our hedges and derivatives and fuel costs and all the other information. But the intent was for that data to flow into one single system that would be used for managerial reporting and reporting to the street. So that was that vision. Something else we wanted to do was really help the end users. Our business was asking for a more modern look and feel, something that would work on tablets and mobile phones, that some of the plant guys could do their mobile rounds on. That also had improved reporting and fewer clicks. So that was kind of a big ticket item for us as well. Underlying all this was the goal of becoming more streamlined, more efficient, and having that flexibility for the future. These projects are very costly in terms of capital and manpower and time, and it really has to provide dividends for the long term. So we wanted that to be the foundation going forward. So last but not least, this all had to be done by January 1, 2020. So that included 200 plus interfaces had to be built, reports completed, testing, user training. We rolled out FICO, work management, material management, SD, new payroll system in time, and then a brand new Ariba system. So a lot of components there that went into that Jan 1 date. So the plan was to report out of our existing ECC platform for the end of the year for 2019, and then have all new reporting for 2020 forward to start in S4HANA. So if we missed January 1, our accounting team and finance team said, hey, that next target date is at the quarter end, the quarter begins. So April 1 was it. So 3 months equated to millions of dollars, and was really not an option we wanted to discuss with upper management about why we're going to miss. So by the way, we did hit that target. And in case you're wondering, we still do have our ECC environment up and running. It's in a read-only mode for historical reporting and regulatory needs. And we did not move any of that historical data over. So that was probably one of the big drivers to our success as well. So maybe what you don't see on here is GRC and securities and roles and performance metrics and hey, how are we going to support our SOX requirements and ITGC. I think our business kind of thought of that as just table stakes, right? The system has to do that. That is not a big differentiator for why we're going to do this. The business, doesn't really care about that stuff. It has to be there. But as far as, going to your management team and asking for millions of dollars, that's not something we're putting on the slide as here's the main driver. They didn't want just a technology upgrade. So it was that long-term vision and support of the business process that really were the main drivers. So I'll take you through the timeline here in a second, but let's drill into some of the other goals in a little bit more detail. So here's one of our kind of current state to future state slides we generated back in the day. So I'm not going to drain all these, but just a couple highlights. So as part of the transformation, we also eliminated a couple systems, one of them being BW for our corporate reporting. We wanted to move to Fiori, move to some new T codes, and we also moved to Analytics Office, which is an Excel add-in. So all of those views were really going to build off this new universal journal, which brought the financial accounting module and the controlling module together in one physical table. If you guys have looked at S4HANA, you may have heard of that AC DOCA table. That's it. That's that universal journal, kind of one-stop shop for everything. So it contains all the financial data as well as information from other modules, and it allows the business to get that data real time from one source. I think there's over 350, 360 different fields in that. It's a monster. But that was a big win for us. So we talked about simplification. So one of the things on the left you can see is those complex data structures. So we had a ton of legacy data for cost centers, profit centers, work orders, GL accounts. We also had a ton of old code we figured out we really didn't need. So usually we did something we usually don't do, and we talked to our CEO and CFO and actually members of the board who approved all this and gave them one slide with all of this data in it and showing how we went from the from and to the to, and how all these data points were reduced and how most of the requirements were met out of the box, how we eliminated thousands of objects, coding objects, and how this translated to less data entry problems, less technical debt, lower support costs, and that they immediately got it. So that was kind of a wow factor for them, right? Seeing those, huge 20 plus thousand numbers before and down to less than a couple thousand. That really resonated with them. So, and then last but not least on there, you'll see the UI, which we've talked about. So timeline. So yes, this was about 14, 15 months, if you want to include some of the hypercare periods. Yes, it was very aggressive. Yes, we are still finishing up hypercare and closing out the project. So I'm still living through some of it. So I don't have PTSD, hasn't quite kicked in yet, but I have the feeling that it's coming. So you can see the dates there and the different phases we went through. I think one thing is, hey, if we had 3 more months, things probably would have gone smoother. We had some feedback. Oh, we should have taken a year and a half. We should have spent 2 years on this. If we would have spent 2 years, we would have finished in 2 years. So would we have been materially better off in 2 years? I don't know. It's hard to say, especially at twice the cost. But I think our requirements went a little bit long. Our build cycle went a little bit long. We actually went through a de-scoping exercise. We had some hard targets from the business and from our business sponsors that we wanted to hit there on customization. And as we were going through the build phase, we realized, hey, we had too many things that the business was trying to continually to add on. So they were having a hard time saying no to functionality that they needed or they thought they needed when we were a much bigger organization. So our business owner said, hey, no, we're going to de-scope items. And I think we removed 300 or so different items from a list, which was a big driver. That still slowed things down, and the development still went a little bit long. Testing, we had months and months of testing planned, and it wasn't enough. So our testing actually bled into December, and that's where we heard the most feedback from our business users and the team members about, hey, what could have gone better. So December, if you look at that, we had testing going on, there's bug fixes going on, we're doing training development, we're going through our mock data loads. We ran a dress rehearsal into production where we had the business go through and validate the data to make sure that they understood how the cutover plan would work. Our cutover plan had 1,500 items in it. So there was a lot going on then, and that was very, very stressful. And when you think about payroll, our first payroll run was due January 3rd, where checks had to be out the door. So if you back that up, we actually had to have payroll up and running around December 15th. So when do we turn off ACH runs and checking and data loads and journal entries and stand up the new system? There was a lot of complexity around that. And that was a very stressful time for the team, but it all came together then. But once again, probably a lot more stressful than it had to be. So I think all in all, it was a probably pretty rough implementation, but we are in hypercare. We're starting to wind down all that additional support. We did close the books on time in February and March. We added a couple of days to the timeline for February. We really didn't need it. We reduced that again in March. We really didn't need it, but it gave the accounting team and the business a little more time to get comfortable with the new system, and we're on track to have our close run on time. So that's very exciting for us. So I think I'll talk a little bit about some of the other modules. The first one is this SAP Time and Attendance Management by Workforce. It was replacing all of our time reporting for both our salaried and hourly employees, but it was part of the SuccessFactors suite, which we already had for training and HR, so it wasn't a huge departure for us. So what are some of those drivers? You can see on the screen, but I think sleek and flexible interface. They had this My Calendar functionality, which was the central location for all of the PTO and vacation banks, all the hours, right? Kind of the one-stop shop for that. Leave balances were easy to see. Time could be requested from a couple of different places. You had daily time entry. Something else that was a big win for us was work costing, the ability to capture an activity-based costing. So you could charge your time against a work order or an internal order. We have a lot of power plants and IT team members who charge their time and split time throughout the day to multiple work orders, so we needed that functionality. And then mobile. Once again, how do we get more mobile and flexible in delivering these solutions so we could get it through the SuccessFactors homepage. We allow people to download an application on their tablets and phones. And we even have this running on our physical time clocks at various facilities. And then lots and lots of reports. So that was some great functionality we had. That went really, really well for us. My CIO, which is my boss, said, Kaleem, if we don't get paid, someone's getting fired. And then the chief accounting officer chimed in as well. You do realize if we don't get the quarterly report done, we're all getting fired. So there was no pressure at all for this piece. So supply chain. This was an Ariba implementation that included several modules for us. There was the supply chain upstream activities that had several modules, including a supplier lifecycle, which was supplier registration. There was an Ariba sourcing module for online collaboration tools for RFPs, RFIs. There was a contract module for online tools built to build, process, and store contracts. Catalog enablement for high volume, low dollar spend. And then we had some downstream activities as well for Ariba Buy, which was that indirect purchasing, which we used for retail and corporate. And then we had an analytics tool just for the supply chain team. So I think 7 modules in all. And this was a fairly new product. And this is probably where we had the most problems with integration and getting the teams and timelines. So this was a big challenge for us. A few objectives here. They really wanted to add value and minimize that contractual risk, help ensure compliance. How do they boost cash flow, free up working capital, and deliver, more bottom line value to the company? So I think simplification, this was another one for them. Simplify their processes, become more efficient. We talked about self-service. How do we create a self-service buying experience where possible? And that was the Amazon-like. We talked about that a lot. Hey, how do we have an Amazon-like experience for the buyers where they could go out, see their catalog with their information in it, with their custom pricing that they could then pick from and then integrate back to S4 seamlessly. So I think those were some of the big items there. We talked a lot about trapping value. How do we unlock trap value? Things that were losing an opportunity, on the virtue of inefficiencies or contract leakage. So how do we gain those efficiencies back, streamline processes, and help that invoices to contracts process to be more efficient? So those are some of the big drivers for us. And then last but not least is our Finance for You property and lease accounting module. So as you can see, there are some of the things you've heard me talk about are right across the top, simplicity, new functionality. So we talked about the first 5 modules. This came late to the party, and as a PMO responsible for that overall success of the project, this did, I was not super thrilled about this starting out and adding the scope, but at the end of the day, it really was the right decision, and it made sense for the business. So I'm glad we added it in. So look at those 3 things. You'll see it's right in line with our business functionality and business goals. Frankly, for years, we've been tied to a third-party solution that was not tightly integrated. It was an additional SOC system for us that we had to deal with, required high levels of maintenance, and it really didn't fit with our long-term objectives for that one-stop shop, reducing integration, simplicity. But historically, there had not been a lot of options to replace it. So having this solution that was embedded in the Universal Journal, combined all the other data in one place, was real-time, fed our reports for everyone that needed it. That ended up really being an easy sell and a great solution to it. So that's it for me. And we're probably about 124, 125 in. Our goal is to go through about 145 and then have some time for questions. So I'm going to hand it off to Dennis at this point. Dennis?
Thank you, Kaleem. And you, good segue. You talked a little bit about historically there wasn't a good solution. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about history of what's been going on in the SAP space for property accounting specifically. So if you go back to the 08, 2010 timeframe, SAP's custom development group had pulled together a lighthouse council, got together a number of customers, and at the end of the day, the output of that were 2 SAP modules, one called Asset Lifecycle Accounting and one called Asset Retirement Obligation. They were fully integrated with SAP. There were a couple of utilities that had adopted them. Utegration was the first system integrator to deploy ALA at one of our customers. So we were on the ground at the time, and actually one of our current employees now who was at SAP at the time was leading that Lighthouse Council for the ALA ARO development. So fast forward a few years, 2015, here comes S4HANA. Here comes the Universal Journal that Colleen talked about. Utegration started looking at that and saying, wow, look what's here. As a matter of fact, we hired a couple developers who were working for SAP developing S4 Finance, developing the Universal Journal. And they started to help us understand how we unlock the value of that. And our first development on the Universal Journal was for regulatory reporting. So one of the modules of Finance for You, regulatory reporting, sits on the Universal Journal. And it allows a lot of flexibility. It gives you the detailed cost flow tracing, visibility. You can do FERC reporting or whatever your regulatory accounting system is in real time. So it delivered a lot of value. And then the following year in 18, we started saying, well, what else can we do with this? And in knowing the ALA history, in knowing there was pent-up customer demand for something different, ALA didn't hit the mark for several reasons. Customers were still looking for an SAP-based solution. For those that have gone best of breed, there were some challenges. So we started looking at that in 18 and started developing our property accounting solution. The reason that's an important part of the history here is that we were developing that actually ahead of NRG. So just want to stress that the solution we're talking about here was not purpose-built for NRG. It was already in the hopper, it was already in development, and it was the property accounting piece of it was well underway before we started talking with NRG. Now, what NRG did bring to the table, if you look at the late 2018, NRG said, hey, Utegration, we like your property accounting solution. However, we really want lease accounting with it, right? They were subject to FASB 842 and some of the other lease requirements. We're not really pleased with where they were at from a solution perspective. So we added lease accounting to the Finance for You portfolio for NRG, and the rest of it is kind of history, right? So Kaleem, if you can go to the next slide, let's talk a little bit about Finance for You property accounting. I'm going to focus on property for the next couple slides. This is an SAP add-in, so it runs inside of SAP. It is a product. A couple slides from now, we'll talk a little bit about the product lifecycle, where we're at, where we're headed. It complements SAP and SAP's out-of-the-box capabilities, meaning we're not competing with SAP, we're not taking over part of their footprint. We work with ARO, we work with asset management, obviously work with plant maintenance, materials management, et cetera. But it seamlessly integrates into that process and automates when customers want automation, it can automate the process. So the pictorial in the slide, no matter how you look at your work and asset management process, if you focus on capital, right, we're generally doing some designing or planning, scheduling, we're executing the work, we're completing it, we're catching up on all our paperwork, and then asset accounting does their job. So, you know, the typical 4 personas that are involved in this sort of process, 4 or 5, depending upon how you slice it and dice it, Finance for You is integrated, seamlessly integrated into that process. So nobody from the designer or the planner to the field workers really has to do anything that is foreign to them or out of what they would normally do, right? There's a asset order that gets generated in the back end, and it follows the work order lifecycle from construction work in progress, or if we're retiring something, retirement work in progress, through the construction complete non-classified, so utilities can begin capitalizing at that point if they want, and then when we get to plant and service, and then if we're doing any kind of retirement, the reserve. So the point is it's seamlessly integrated into SAP so that everybody can perform their specific role without jumping out of their swim lane. Also say this, now that we're talking SAP EAM, we've got a number of prospective customers who are not running SAP for all of their capital work, and it appears that this will work fine, provided they've got a reasonable level of integration with a third-party EAM system. So if you're in one of those situations, if you're getting, you know, labor and material costs, we think we're in pretty good shape. So I'd love to talk to you about that if you're in that sort of situation, but we think we're pretty confident about how that would work. So Kaleem, next slide. This slide is actually, the first time I saw this slide, if you'll notice the NRG logo in the upper right-hand corner, it was an NRG slide. Dave Callum, the Chief Accounting Officer, presented this slide. This is his slide, and I loved it, so I kind of stole it from him. So Dave is the guy who's really realizing the benefits of Finance for You. So if you look at, you know, where NRG was, right, how Dave classified the non-integrated solutions, you could tell it's from the business because nothing in there is IT speak until the last bullet, right? Dave was like, hey, our month end, we got to wait for these batch jobs to happen. And even nightly, there's batch jobs. If there's a master data update, we're dependent upon the batch jobs to get the actual data into both our SAP system and our external best-of-breed system. Monthly reconciliations were a pain. They had no visibility. We hear this all the time when we talk to the financial department of utilities. It's the lack of visibility. They've got a black box out there. Numbers go in, numbers come out. They have no idea what's going on. They can't trace the costs. So what NRG was doing was actually running reports from both systems, SAP and their asset accounting system, and trying to do some true ups and figure out what was going on. There was just no transparency. There was a handful of users that had access to the best-of-breed system. So if you wanted something, you had to go request it of them. You couldn't get it on your own. And then the last bullet, yeah, there's IT implications, right? Maintenance of multiple systems, upgrades, regression testing, et cetera. So now fast forward to today, fast forward to where we started in January with NRG. We've closed January, closed February, as Colleen mentioned, getting ready to close the books again. So real-time postings, things, as we all know, things happen in real time in SAP. Now for NRG, same thing with asset accounting and lease accounting. Real-time master data updates, you create a new asset record, you create a new piece of equipment or functional location that has capital cost accounting implications. It's all there in real time. Everything is visible, full SAP drill down. So you could start in the asset accounting master data and drill back to your EAM transactional data and see exactly what happened. So now we're in a position where there's a single source of the truth. I've heard a number of people say this about S4, that although they've talked about it for decades, SAP has finally delivered a record-to-report capability. Because now in S4, you can truly do that because of the universal journal, right? We've always been a great transaction engine. You could always get transactions into SAP. Now you can actually see the data and get the data out. So Dave's really jazzed about those things. And then again, IT perspective, yeah, simplified maintenance, upgrade, regression test. And as Colleen mentioned, they've eliminated a SOX system. So very big, very important for them, big win. So Colleen, the next slide, please. So, you know, when we talk with utilities, one of their primary drivers is financials. And when we talk about an S4HANA business case and talk about total cost of ownership, one of the things that I try to appeal to people is that although you may be happy with your best-of-breed system, your S4HANA planning is your strategic inflection point to validate that it's the right answer for you going forward. And it's the time to look at a total cost of ownership equation to understand what it costs you to have a best of breed versus what it might cost you to have this Finance for You SAP add-in. And some of the things that people often overlook is hardware, right? We're working with a customer right now and they're like, oh, our hardware's good. We're like, well, are you going to have to refresh it in 5 years? Well, yeah, we are going to have to. Well, do a 5-year total cost of ownership, right? Don't think, oh, my hardware's good. Oh, I just upgraded my Oracle database. I don't have to worry about it. Look at the longer term picture, right? Do a 3 to 5 year TCO. Not only is there the integration layer to consider, because if you're running a best of breed in ECC and thinking of taking it with S4, you've got to look at the new connector and understand the cost to stand that up and what it takes from a hardware and a manpower perspective. And then the cost to, in many cases, reconfigure the best of breed system because it's used to feeding from ECC. And as we all know, the largest single change in S4 was table simplifications in finance. So the world that your best of breed solution was used to talking to has radically changed, and it just doesn't plug in. There's a lot of work to do there. Additionally, SAP is SAP, right? Finance for You is SAP. When we deploy, we do knowledge transfer both to the business and IT with the hope that people can just support it like the rest of SAP on their own. You don't need special support, you know, because it's a non-SAP system. You know, and the list goes on, right? Training materials, data replications, and then you get into the other part of this where the optimization. This is a packaged application. As I mentioned, we're going to take a quick look at the next slide is the product roadmap. So the other part of this, and I'll wrap on this slide here, Kaleem, is that we really leverage our SAP investment. Again, we're complementing it, we're plugging into it. So if it's part of an S4 transformation, great. If you're already on S4, again, we're trying to leverage that investment and not erode the value of that SAP investment. Let's try to leverage it to the maximum. So on the next slide is the product roadmap. I'm in no way, shape, or form going to drain this. The point of having this slide in here, and you will get the deck and you will have access to the recording. The point of the slide is to emphasize that this is a product. It is not a one-off. It has a life cycle. We have an approved roadmap going forward. It's funded. It's approved all the way up at our board level. There's 4 customers live today. There's 2 additional projects that'll be starting up here in 2020. I believe one of them will be live before the end of the year. So in a very short period of time, I think we've had a lot of success here with this particular product. And as promised, a little bit about integration. So, Kaleem, if you could go to the next slide. If you're familiar with who integration is, you might think of us as the ISU company, right? But we do much more. We do cover almost the entire SAP footprint. Yes, we focus on energy and utilities. We do a little public sector work, but mostly around energy and utilities. We started in 2008, so we're about 12 years old. We've got 300 employees, about 50 clients, as you can see from the logos around the map. We have worked with a lot of the utilities in North America, US and Canada. So, you know, we're SAP consultancy focused on the utility industry is what it boils down to. So that's it. That's the sales pitch. When have you ever had a one-slide sales pitch? With that, Kaleem, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Dennis. So this is the last slide in the presentation. So maybe just a couple closing thoughts for you. Dennis stole my thunder a little bit there with the words from our CAO and our chief business sponsor, that record to reporting. I thought that was a very succinct way in his vision to say, hey, that's what I want. How do I get record to reporting in one platform? And I think that's finally been achieved with this S4HANA and that AC DOCA table, which we've talked about, running on this in-memory super fast platform. You know, I think business reporting, getting data out of the system, improved access to data, real time, those are all fantastic wins that, you know, we've been celebrating across the organization and across the business and up to the CEO, CFO, and board. And once again, that long-term vision of, hey, how do we start whittling down this environment? Let's start putting more things in S4. That's something that's on my roadmap to revisit. Hey, we removed the SOC system. So what else is out there we can get back to that out of the box, less customization on this platform? So that's kind of my long-term direction for my CIO and the chief accounting officer as well, and CFO. So that is it for us. We're right at about 1:40. So we did want to save some time for questions for you guys. I'll hand it back to our moderators.
Thank you so much, Kaleem and Dennis. We already have a lot of really great questions that have come in during the presentation, and we're going to try to address as many of those questions as we can right now. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you after, and we'll also post them on LinkedIn. So Kaleem, when you were talking about the program timeline, the question that came in was plant maintenance and project management out of scope? Wondering how you handled open work if you didn't migrate any history.
So we did migrate work related to future work. So January, February is a big period for us where we do a lot of maintenance. So that was all part of the data migration to include all of those items in scope So in addition to work orders and, PRs, POs that are open and carrying forward, we moved all those open balances. So if we had something that had started in December and was flowing over into the new year, we, cut that and said, hey, we have X number of hours left. That was absolutely part of scope. Project management. So was that part of the other question? Was project management included for the overall program? Was that the question?
Yes.
Yes, it was. So you saw from the 6 streams, I had a business partner and myself. We were in the PMO with our major integrators, and we met. We had a very large governance. We met every week with our steering committee. That same day, we met every week with 60 different people. We had, I think, 160 to 175 people from the business working on this on and off throughout the year, in addition to another 100 or so people from our major integrators. So yeah, that was project management was included in that, and was obviously key to our success. Great question.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, sorry, I just got another comment in the question chat box. By project management, it meant the SAP project system.
The project systems, yeah, that's what I thought the question was. Yeah.
No, sorry, we did not do that module. No.
Okay, sorry for the confusion there.
Yeah.
So another question is, can you elaborate on how SOX system was removed? How were you able to validate segregation of duties violation?
So as part of the Finance for You implementation, this third-party system was a bolt-on to HANA. We had integration with it. So that system has been removed, and we have pivoted to the S4HANA to the Finance for You product that is built on the S4HANA platform. So versus a bolt-on product that sits on the side that we have to integrate with, it's on its own hardware, that we're sending data back and forth, that has its own logins. So that system where we historically did our asset and lease accounting has been removed. So let's see, SOX. Wow. So I'm not really sure how to answer that. So we had, between our internal audit and our external audit, we also implemented Greenlight, which was a tool we used for our online products to help with our SOD and controls. We had an extensive program to look at existing roles for security and then map those to new roles. That was something that took a lot of effort as part of our 3 or 4 testing cycles to look at that and validate that those new roles were working correctly. So I'm not sure if I answered that part adequately, but there was just a lot in that that's a lot of detail we could go into.
Yes, thank you so much. And like I said before, we can definitely follow up on some of these questions afterwards if need be. One other question that we had, sorry for that, 1 second. Did you use Ariba for services, including contingent workers? If so, did you integrate with SAP MM at the PO level and service sheets?
Hey, Kaleem, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so,
yeah.
Yep. Sorry, I hit mute on accident. So we implemented Fieldglass for our contingent workers that had been up and running for years. So we have integrated that as part of our implementation. That was one of the 200 plus interfaces. So that's typically for contingent workers at our offices, main sites. We also implemented Track, which we use for contingent workers at our power plant. So the plants found that, hey, when we're going to onboard 300 people to come out and do some major maintenance, and they're all going to start the same day, and then another 100 the next day. the overhead for field glass was a little cumbersome. So Track, we use them for mostly for our facilities. And then, if they need to buy spare parts or tools or equipment, they go through Track as well for that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And was the Lease solution built off Nikisa Lease solution or solely a Utegration solution?
I'll take that one. So this was solely a Utegration solution. And in the NRG landscape, they had paid their third party, their best of breed vendor, to develop a lease accounting solution for them that I believe did go into production in ECC. But the ability to completely retire that system, as Kaleem has explained, it just made a lot of sense to replace that, even though it was fairly new functionality that had been written for them. So the Lease was pure Utegration development, again, though, leveraging what SAP had to offer out of the box. And it was not Nikisa, it was not IS Real Estate. It was starting with pure S4HANA and building from there.
Great. And Dennis, we'll have this final question for you. If you could just clarify, when we say property, do you actually mean fixed asset, i.e. plant?
Correct. Yes. So sorry, I use those terms interchangeably. Property accounting, plant accounting, fixed asset accounting, really talking about all one and the same.
Okay, perfect. And then, sorry, one actual final question back to Kaleem. What is your long-term plan with regards to retention of the ECC system since historical information was not converted?
I knew that was going to come up. So, yeah, we have looked at a couple different options for retiring that, but due to the legal holds, regulatory, our FP&A team is always looking back at historicals. We get requests from our divested companies to look at historical data. So our intent was to continue to downsize that for probably the next year and a half or so, but keep it up. Those requests are going to start dwindling. So reduce the hardware footprint, reduce the number of people who have access to it. We've looked at, can we take it offline? Can we move it to the cloud? Can we compress it? Can we get it off the database? So, we don't have the perfect answer for that yet. That's something we're still looking at, but we couldn't find a great answer to that as part of our one-year implementation. There was just too many things going on. So since we knew we had, a year and a half or so to kind of plan for it, it's on our back burner.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and wrap up the Q&As, and we will follow up. I know there were some questions that still were not answered, so we'll follow up afterwards. I know that we have a next slide regarding some of our upcoming webinars that are part of this Wednesday asset management webinar series. So just wanted to fill y'all in on that. We have the voice enable mobile apps with Allen AI, which is next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then we also have realizing the benefits of intelligent asset management the Wednesday after that, April 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern time.
Hey, Jamie, if I can put in a quick plug for Allen AI, this is something really cool. So it can sit on top of any mobile app, and it's intelligent voice integration. So it can interact with a field tech around the work order. It can read the work order. It can read the directions to the next work site. It can interact. The field tech can say, put in this many hours, bring up any attachments. Here's the details. I just swapped out a meter. Here's the serial number and the the end read for the old meter, here's a serial number, and the start read for the new meter. It is really cool. So even if it's not in your area, please pass it along to those people in your enterprise that may be interested in that. It's really neat stuff. It's worth the investment of some time to understand what's going out there. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you so much for that additional information, Dennis. So that concludes our presentation today. I'd like to thank our speakers, Kaleem and Dennis, once again, and thank you all for attending. We'll be sending out the recording to all attendees later today or tomorrow, and we hope to see you on one of our future educational webinars. Take care.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.